In the beginning, let me apologize for any mistakes or whatever in the talk, as it's almost 3 in the morning here. So I'm trying to stay awake to give this presentation, but it's not my usual comfort zone. So please forgive me for any difficulties. So I don't want to talk too much about myself. Most of you probably already know me. For those who don't, I work with FileMaker more than half of my life, and one of my hobbies or one of the things that I like is doing things that seem impossible at the first sight. So that's the closest thing to our today's topic, because that's what led me to create the examples I will be talking about today. And if you want to learn more, feel free to take a screenshot of this slide or come back to it later from the recording, and I will just jump straight to the topic of today. So what I will be talking about is different ways of working with PDFs using the calculation engine in FileMaker with no plugins, no external services, nothing, which means on the positive side, it's compatible with all versions of FileMaker, including Go, FileMaker Server, all three platforms, Mac, Windows, Linux, everywhere. The downside of it, as you will learn soon, is that if you want to use these examples in your solutions, you will end up having more than 100 custom functions, and the calculation engine is definitely not one of the fastest ways how to calculate things. So hopefully in this session I will show you both sides of the coin, both from the performance perspective and also from the perspective of how it all works on Windows, which I, even though being so experienced developer and FileMaker user, I made that mistake when creating these examples by assuming that PDF is de facto standard and supported on both Mac and Windows nowadays, and I was quite surprised after releasing the examples that I was wrong. So let me start with where all this started, and it was maybe 20 years ago almost. If you are FileMaker developers for so long, you may recognize this document on the right side. This is what we were getting as a license proof of license when we bought FileMaker license. And as we very early started, I think around 2002 or 2003 as a FileMaker reseller in Czech Republic, this is what we were getting from FileMaker, but it was all in English. That was one downside. The other thing is it didn't contain everything, and as we started getting so-called ESD, electronic software download, the other downside of it was that we were getting proof of license for our clients in English with no download link on it. So what we wanted to do is provide our clients with something better, and this is a sample of our proof of license that we are issuing for our clients from FileMaker with the use of my example or my custom functions. And the most important thing on this example or on this sample is that one of the things that the PDF we generate for our clients contains are links for downloading FileMaker installations and also now starting with FileMaker 18, also the license certificates. So this is something that I started creating for the clients as soon as we had something to give them for downloads, but initially I was creating every license proof as a PDF document from Pages manually for every single client, every single license. As our customer base started growing, I wanted to automate it, obviously. We are FileMaker developers, we are FileMaker resellers. We should eat the dog food, so it was even not looking good if my customer told me, how is it possible that your PDF that you're sending us is generated in Pages instead of FileMaker? So that was the challenge that I was facing, and I could do that all except for the download links. So that's where I started exploring the possibilities of using PDFs with links, and I'll keep the story short because you can read the whole story on our website in an article. But the main idea was, well, if I create a PDF that contains a link and I include that PDF, let's say in a container field, what if that link remains functional in the PDF as I export the PDF from FileMaker? So I tried that. It was great because when I tried, the link really worked. But it was only an illusion of functional link, because what I discovered is that because the link itself was a valid URL, I was getting the preview app on the Mac recognizing that as a link automatically for me. So when I replaced that, as you can see here, so it was working for these download links for the FileMaker installers. But when I was trying to create links that actually showed a nice name in the PDF and wanted to make them clickable, that was the point when my idea stopped working. But because I was already dived deep into the problem, and one of my natures is I don't like to give up, I said to myself, well, I'm in the middle of this, I have to find a solution. So what I did is I looked up the internet for any kinds of information about how links work in PDF, and what I ended up in learning, let me just quickly pop up that file here. I forgot to prepare it for now, but here it is. So what I found after a few searches on Google is the PDF specification from 2008, which Adobe actually made public, and that was the point in history when PDF became open source. So this is the technical documentation of what the PDF format looks like and how it works and what it should what it should consist of. If you look at the table of contents, it's about almost 700 pages, over 745 pages of technical documentation, and even in a language quite weird to a FileMaker developer, written by Adobe employees, I had a hunch that it was intentionally written in a way hard to understand by general public, so that Adobe could claim that they made PDF public domain. But very difficult to understand for the public domain. But anyway, I was actually spending time on vacation during summer last year, and because I like challenges like this, I dived deep into this document, and I discovered that links in a PDF actually are additional objects where you place when you add an object to the PDF, which is located at specific coordinates on the page, and that object contains the URL that you can click. So I said to myself again, why not try to create something from it? And I found an example of a very simple PDF constructed from scratch using using just plain text editor. And I can show you, if I jump forward, if I take this example and generate the PDF from it, save this as a PDF, and now I can open it in a text editor. Sorry, where is it? PDF with links, here it is. So now it should open, take a moment. So at first sight it seems like a mess, but if I scroll down a little bit, you will see that there are some pieces of relatively understandable text, and it has some clearly defined structure. So I studied this from the documentation. All this mess is actually binary data which is compressed by algorithm called FLATE decode or FLATE encode, but there are also parts which are not encoded this way, and this includes the objects that I actually added there as links. So if I select just one example here, this is an object which says it's a type of action and it contains a URI, Unified Resource Identifier, and this is the link that's clickable in the PDF. So this was the main discovery that I made, that there is a structure which is well defined by the standard. So I started building a few custom functions in FileMaker to work with that. I also took a very simple page with just probably one text object from FileMaker, exported it as a PDF and examined it with a text editor, and simply tried to map the contents of that file to the structure as it was defined by the standard. So this doesn't have too much logic in it. The key thing here is that function called PDF to JSON. This is actually a very, and this is obviously dependent on the point of view, but for me a relatively simple parsing function. I'm utilizing the while function to go through the structure of the file, and this is actually turning the PDF into a JSON structure. I can show you what the JSON looks like. So if I put up the and turn on the script bar. So when I go here, I think at that point, sorry. Here we will have something in the variables. Oh, sorry, once again. Okay, so now it has generated the PDF for me, and this is the JSON structure extracted from the PDF. I can format it with the native function with the JSON format elements. And here you are. This is what I got from the PDF that was exported from FileMaker. So whatever binary data I just keep in hexadecimal so that it doesn't get changed. But here I have some structure that I can work with. So this is the principle of all the functions that I will be showing today. I basically take a PDF, convert it to a JSON structure, which is relatively easy to work with in FileMaker, starting from FileMaker, I believe 16, where JSON functions were introduced. And then the structure basically is that the PDF consists of pages, and every page contains objects. And then there is something called resources, and every page can use those resources and reference them. Such resources can be things like fonts, graphical objects like pictures, and so on. But the nice thing about links is that they are not encoded in any difficult way. The only difficulty with PDF is that everything has to be defined by its position on the page. So you need to know what the page size is in points. Point is there are 72 points per inch. So basically this way you calculate the size of the page. And one difference between FileMaker and PDF is that PDF calculates coordinates from the bottom left corner of the page, while FileMaker's coordinates in the layout are from the top left corner. So if you examine the example, you can unlock full access to it. You will see that the main thing here, the main difficulty here is that I go through fields on the list view and calculate their positions so that I place the links in the PDF on the right place. But in the end, what I get is a PDF. Again, I can replace it. And when I open the PDF with links here, that was just exported, you can see that every line here is an active link which I can click and open it in a browser. And this comes from the data here. So this was my start of the journey to exploring PDFs. Links were just a very simple thing, but as I mentioned, I like challenges. So as I explored the PDF format and the documentation, I discovered that it might be actually quite easy to not only modify an existing PDF, but create one from scratch and draw into it. So as a fun thing, I created another example I called PDF Canvas. And basically this is a graphical editor built in FileMaker, where again I can show it to you live. I can do things like draw a line or a rectangle. I can make it stroke. I can draw a rounded rectangle. I can even draw a complex path like a tree. If I change the fill color, I will have the tree green. And all this is done in FileMaker using calculations and scripts. Now, as you can see here, I even have some controls here. So when I change the line width, it will show me a wider line. If I change this join style, it will immediately update the icon here. And likewise, when I change the color, it will also update the controls. And all this is also dynamically generated PDF. So, for instance, for these icons, I have these calculations like line color sample, and what I'm using here is I basically use commands which are derived from PostScript, because PDF is actually derived from PostScript language. And the language for drawing in PDF is quite simple. You have just maybe about 15 different commands. The only difficulty is that those commands are very short. Those are not readable words, but instead just typically single letters. But once you learn those commands, it's basically sequencing or putting those commands one after another, and you draw whatever PDF supports. So it was not difficult to build this. It was just funny. I even created a script here which draws the example picture. So when I run the script here, draw example, you will see that it creates the original picture that you saw in the beginning, and this is what the script looks like. Where is it? Draw example here. So it's quite readable. I just add a shading pattern as a resource, and then fill a rectangle to draw the sky here, and so on. The nice thing here is that you have 100% control of what you create. So obviously, creating a graphical editor in FileMaker has probably no business value. But if you imagine that you have data in FileMaker and you want some clever way of visualizing that data, then you can already understand how being able to draw on a blank canvas can help you. And the nice thing here is it's PDF. So if I take this and export it to Finder, you see that I can scale it, and it's still nicely sharp because it's vector graphics. So if you want to generate something that's printable in high quality, or something that's quite complex, such as complex scheme or map or whatever, where you want to see the big picture, but you also want to be able to zoom in and see some details, being able to draw it in the PDF can be very helpful. And again, as I mentioned, all this is just based on functions on FileMaker calculation engine. This one already has more, actually 86 custom functions, and out of which 83 are just the drawing functions. But again, here only a small part of it is the drawing itself. The biggest complexity lies in drawing or typing text, because PDF actually is a format that works like a vector picture. It's even if you write text into PDF, it's still just the purpose of PDF is to provide consistent visual representation. So even if you write a simple word such as FileMaker, it does not always have to be represented the same way inside the PDF. It can be, you can find it in that as a word, but it can also be split to individual letters, and they don't even have to be in the right order, as long as every letter is drawn in the right position. Which, by the way, is the reason why PDF is a good format to present to humans, but it's very difficult to process by computers, because it's almost like having a document scanned or printed on paper and scanned and running OCR, because things don't have to be in order. They don't have to be represented in a way that computers will understand. But again, if you want to visualize data, if you want to produce a high quality output from the data, this can be very handy. Okay, so this was the second level for me, and because I still had some vacation left last year, I thought, okay, what might be the next thing to do? And what came to my mind was barcodes. So I created the third example, but maybe let me, before I dive into this, let me talk about that mistake that I made when I created this example. I mistakenly assumed that this will work on Windows, but it didn't. And I didn't even bother testing it until I released the example and someone told me, hey, it doesn't work for me. Why? And I discovered that on Windows, even now, FileMaker 19 still does not natively support PDF in containers. And actually, that means that FileMaker on Windows doesn't natively support any vector graphics in containers at all, because PDF is right in the current version of FileMaker the only vector graphics format that's supported on a Mac. So I think that one of the things that we need to vote for with Claris is to add native support for at least PDF. I would prefer to have also support for SVG and maybe other formats, but at least making it consistent between the platforms would be great. This is a slightly updated version that I am going to upload probably over the weekend. This is modified just by making the container field here use interactive content on Windows. That's the checkbox that you can check in layout mode for a container field. But as you can see in the corner here, the controls are still not working, because those would not work nicely in such a small scale with the interactive content being enabled. So if you agree with me, here is a link where you can vote for the idea in the FileMaker the Claris community to actually have PDF as a format, which, as you saw, is public domain since 2008, natively supported by FileMaker on all platforms. I think it would be a great update. And those of you who use Windows or have a lot of experience with Windows, you probably know that within the last few years there were many different issues with PDF on Windows. Okay, so back to my journey, and one thing that helped me with these challenges, with these examples, was the while function. And this leads me to saying that with this function, which was introduced in FileMaker 18, the calculation engine in FileMaker got maybe 10 times more powerful than it was before. Because with the while function, we can do a lot. We can do quite complex calculations that basically are programs, algorithms, complex algorithms, and we can even nest multiple while functions inside. So this is something that actually made me think the next idea of barcodes finally became possible even without scripting. Again, on our web, you can read my detailed article about this example and how I created it. My main idea was, let's do it so that it's independent on plugins, independent on external functions, external services, but I also wanted to make a reason for people to use this instead of all those existing solutions, such as Barcode Creator, which was also independent on plugins. So one of the challenges I presented to myself was, this needs to be at least as good as Barcode Creator, but even faster. And because I knew Barcode Creator was using scripts, the only way how to make it faster was not using scripts, using calculations. If you ever try to measure how long it takes to execute one script step and how long it takes to evaluate one custom function, you know that calculation engine is way faster than the scripting engine. But it's relative. It's quite fast in comparison to, let's say, FileMaker 12, but just running a loop with million iterations still takes about 7 seconds on my MacBook Pro. And it also requires additional function to actually allow so many iterations. So here I have another thing submitted as an idea in the Claris community, which I will be glad for you to vote for, and that's making the calculation engine even much faster. And one of the reasons is not just crazy ideas like generating barcodes in calculations, but the main reason why this is important is that calculations are everywhere. If you go to a layout mode and you select an object, you have conditional formatting. Conditional formatting can have multiple rules. If you refresh the layout, every rule of every object's conditional formatting gets calculated 4 times. Try it yourself. And there are many more, like on height object when there are script triggers, there are many other things, not just unstored calculations as it used to be. In the past, unstored calculations were the biggest source of unnecessary processing when you refresh the window. Today, it's only a small portion because the calculations are really everywhere. So it's really time to make the calculation engine faster. But let me show you for a moment how the barcode generating works. So again, this is based on custom functions, and here it's even the crazier number. If you check here, you see 111 custom functions, and most of it is because of the 2D barcodes or 2D codes. Obviously, when I started with this, wanted to start with something simple. So I looked up the Wikipedia. Here you can see for every single barcode type some links. So I think I started with the code 39, which is one of the easiest. This barcode is simply a fixed number of points per character, and it has quite simple definition. So constructing code 39 is not rocket science. There were also already custom functions building code 39 barcodes just using underscores rotated by 90 degrees, but it was just a start, and as I was adding more barcode types, my intention was to add as many as possible of those that are supported by FileMaker Go for scanning. So those 1D barcodes, that was the simple part. I probably spent about a week building all of them. I even created one thing here, which I call raw 1 ID. And this one works simply by taking each number from the source string as a number of units for a line or for a bar or space. So if I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, that means that I get a bar of width of 1 unit, then space of 2 units, another bar of 3 units, and so on. This is very useful for building custom barcodes, which are not part of any barcode standard. And this helped me to construct control barcodes for configuring barcode scanners. So this is something that you might find useful, and it's something that you probably won't find many solutions for on the internet. And the construction of it's actually the function that, if you want to explore how these functions work, this is probably the easiest one to understand. It's very short, so if you want to explore the code and try to understand it, I suggest you start with this raw barcode and then dive into the other ones later. Now, when this became much more complex, and that was the moment where I actually discovered the performance limits of the calculation engine. Those were the 2D codes, and the main reason is 2D codes to make to be able to contain a lot of data and still eliminate any scanning errors. They use so-called self-correcting codes, and most of the popular barcodes use mathematics, which is called Galois fields or finite field math. Excuse me. So this is something that brought me back to the time of university studies, and I had to learn how this works and port it from, I think I ported it from a C or PHP code into FileMaker code, and all these custom functions are just Galois field arithmetics. And The reason this is used is because it's needed by this popular self-correction code called read Solomon, and that's used by most of the 2D codes. Basically, if you have, let's say, 10 bytes of data, the way it works is that you calculate additional maybe 5 or 7 bytes, and the way it works is that if you lose relatively significant portion of the encoded data, by applying these self-correction codes, you can calculate the missing data from the rest as long as you have enough remaining. So what that creates is, for instance, if you have a QR code and you hide part of the QR code with a dirt or whatever, it will still be readable. Specifically, QR code even lets you specify the level of error correction, and the maximum is high, which is 30%. That actually means that if you select this level of error correction and generate the QR code, if in this generated QR code you hide or modify 30%, up to 30% of this image, you will still be able to read the data from the code. It's quite amazing, but it's quite difficult math, and it becomes very difficult for FileMaker to use this math because it takes a lot of time to generate this QR code. So in that I learned a lot about how FileMaker calculation engine works. I discovered things like when you have a while function, I can show you right here in the division, I think. So there is a while function. This one I originally wrote on probably 10 lines by having some intermediate calculations there kept in the variables. And I discovered that every single variable you create in the while function adds quite significant overhead. So if the while function needs to be calculated if it has to go through 1,000 iterations, it can add seconds to the total calculation time just by having 2 lines instead of 1 in the calculation. So when I created the first version of the function for generating the Aztec code, which looks like this, what I just encoded, and it took me like 2 seconds, in the first version of my function it was taking about a minute. So in addition to learning the Galois field mathematics and read Solomon codes, I also had to optimize the calculation to run almost 10 times faster. But that's when my math optimizer personality helped me, and my experience with FM Bench and FileMaker optimizations. So I finally succeeded, and when I generated when I measured the generation time, I discovered I really succeeded in making it faster than the barcode creator. And one thing, thanks to knowing the PDF format, that I got as a bonus, and this is again something that most of the other available QR code generators don't do, is I can try this one for instance. If I enlarge this barcode, you will see there are no tiny white lines between those pixels. If you try almost any QR code generator, and enlarge the generated code, which if you generate it in PDF or apps, you will see white lines between the pixels, because those codes generate every single pixel as a separate object. The difference I made in this example is that all the black areas are joined into a single object. So when you even edit it in a vector graphics editor, you will still be able to select all this as a single object. And it can also generate it with a transparent background, by the way. So I think that's enough about barcode generation. Let me just remind you again, this is completely based on calculations, so it will work on FileMaker server in server-side script, in FileMaker Go, WebDirect, everywhere, except for Windows, as I mentioned, where we still have the issue of having to use either WebViewer or interactive container. And now this leads me to a new thing, a bonus, something I started working on after reading a question from Matthew Wood, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, who wanted to build something where he could navigate through a PDF using his own buttons, his own scripts on an iPad. And his challenge for me was how to make it so that out of multi-page PDF, which again I can show you here on the example, and this is the PDF which I'm using here. So this is PDF which has 3 pages, and first of all he wanted to be able to automatically see page number 2 instead of page number 1. So you know that when you show a PDF in a container, if it's not interactive, it will only show you first page. If it's interactive, it will start on the first page and you have to scroll to the other pages. The other thing he wanted is he wanted to be able to see either top or bottom half of the page. Probably in order to be able to zoom in and show just half of the page at a time, full screen on iPad landscape. So I recalled what the structure of the PDF looks like, and as I mentioned, it's a list of pages and each page has objects. But the main thing is that it starts with the list of pages, so basically the basic structure, the root structure of the PDF is some kind of structure or tree. To be correct, it's a tree, so tree of pages, and so this is something that's not encoded in. It's not compressed typically in a PDF. So I thought, well, if I improve a little bit the parsing algorithm that I have, I might be able to do things like change the order of pages, extract pages, delete pages, and because I can modify the parameters of each page, I can also crop them. So what I created here are additional functions. They still need to be fine-tuned and there are some bugs in them, but I added things like remove page and crop page at this moment, and it basically takes a few parameters where you set the top, left, right and bottom margins for cropping, and that way I was able, with just a custom function, to do exactly what Matthew was asking for. And to show it to you that it really works live, I can take another example here, which is the same document but with additional colorful rectangles, and I can drag it here to the example. And now you see again that it has extracted page number 2, and in these two containers or these two web viewers, it has even cropped the page to show either bottom or top half of it. If I so this is what will be my next example. I still need to find some free time to finish it, but I will let you download this working version today so that you can examine it, play with it. And unlike things like drawing, this is really not very dangerous because the structure of the PDF is clearly defined by the standard. So the operations that my functions are doing here are quite compatible with any PDF viewer. So you don't have to be afraid of using that even in production environment. So if I return back to the slides, here are links to all the articles about the already published examples. All the QR codes in the bottom, which you can now scan and immediately go to those articles, are generated with the barcodes example. And the last one, this link, and the last barcode will let you immediately download this bonus example for manipulating pages in a PDF. So that's it what I have prepared. I think we will have enough time for questions, so feel free to ask them. And if you like it, I will be glad if you provide me with some feedback using the link on the left side of this slide. And if you really like it a lot, feel free to also use the second link. So that's it from me, and I am ready for answering questions.
Thank you, HOnza, for this presentation. I have a question about the link to find that PDF in case people are also interested in reading that document, if you have it or have access.
Okay. Yeah, so if you go to the first example, adding links to PDF, and download that example, basically what I used to generate that sample PDF here, PDF with links, that's basically a list of all the resources that I used to create that example. So one of them here is PDF on Wikipedia, and wait a minute. This is tech notes from Adobe. Yeah, here's Adobe's official PDF reference. So this is the link where you can get the official documentation.
Oh, so your resources are right there in your sample file then.
Yes. So basically, if you open the PDF links, here are all the links, and also I mentioned the most valuable resources in the custom functions themselves directly. Maybe not this one.
Okay, thank you.
This is like Christmas for PDF nerds.
Yeah, definitely. But one thing that I discovered One thing that I found quite useful is a PDF validator. This is this one. Because obviously my first version didn't work 100% correctly, so it produced invalid PDFs. So this tool helped me a lot to find out what I was doing wrong.
It was like a debugger?
Yes, almost. And this other one, PDF decompressor, that's great for examining PDFs. As I mentioned, the binary data in the PDFs are compressed. So this tool decompresses all the compressed parts of any PDF that you provided, so you can then see it in the plain text.
HOnza, I have another question. Oftentimes, when we see or hear presentations from Christian from Monkey Bread, he says how, I think he has something built in to the plugin, and I forget the name of it, but it can create PDFs that are much lighter in weight.
Yeah, what Christian has in the MBS plugin, he basically built a set of functions which work as a bridge between FileMaker and the Dyna PDF library. Dyna PDF is one of the most widely used libraries for working with PDFs. It provides a lot of functionality. And if you want a high performance tool to manipulate PDFs in FileMaker, it's probably the best choice ever. The only other option I would consider is probably scripting languages and using the PDFTK open source library, which is probably the easiest to use within Python. So that's another approach that we actually used in a business project, where we were using a plugin just to trigger a Python script, and we were using Python with PDFTK. So if you're looking for something high performant or complex, Dyna PDF with MBS plugin is one choice. PDFTK is the other one. MBS plugin will be probably easier to implement, but you need to pay for the license both for the MBS plugin and also for the Dyna PDF library, because that's a commercial library. The Python and PDFTK approach has the benefit of being free of charge because it's open source, but it would be more complex to implement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think when we first talked about having HOnza over here for the DIGFM, I downloaded the PDF barcode generator that he had up there as a sample file. I just stuck it up on our server, and I ended up using it just as a sample, used that as a utility file just to generate those codes for me so that I could put them into some other file. Yeah, it worked pretty well, actually. I mean, a really complex code does take a bit longer to generate. So yeah, if you're doing one at a time, it's not a big deal. But if you're trying to batch thousands of them, yeah, it would be slower.
Yeah, using it as a standalone file and just calling it externally through a script, that's a good way to implement it if you don't want to copy all those 111 custom functions to your files. For me, it was more like a fun challenge. But I basically asked myself, can it be done with zero scripting? So it was like a fun project for me.
Wow. So back on the one where you had this, I forget which part of this was it. you had a custom function for every single font that you would have in the PDF?
Yeah, fonts in PDFs. That's a difficult topic. I actually spent, I think, 3 or 4 weeks with that. And to be honest, the way I implemented it is even not considered 100% correct with PDF of higher version than 1.2. Because originally PDF natively supported a few fonts, and the reason was to keep those files as small as possible. So and that were actually 12 font faces. I think 4 different faces of Helvetica, 4 different faces of Times, 4 faces of Courier, and then the 4th one was Symbol, which I didn't, it was, I think it was Zap Dingbats or something like one of those symbol fonts with all those weird characters. And basically, the standard originally was defined so that every PDF viewer, to be compliant with the standard, was required to be able to render these fonts equally in terms of metrics. So if you used one of these fonts in a PDF, you didn't have to embed the font in the PDF, and you were guaranteed that it will look the same on all platforms everywhere. If you wanted to use different font, originally you could reference that font, but you were dependent on whether the target platform, target computer will have that font installed. And there was an option, but it was not required, to embed the font in the PDF. Starting with PDF, I think 1.3, they changed this approach, and right now having fonts, using fonts which are not embedded in the PDF is deprecated and is not guaranteed to be supported. So to optimize the size of the PDF, the way embedding fonts works in PDF is that let's say you have a font which contains maybe 500 glyphs for different characters, but if you only use the 26 letters of English alphabet or even less, and you generate a PDF with the embedded font, it will only embed those glyphs that are used. So if you generate a PDF with just a sequence of letter A or only numeric digits, it will only embed definitions of those few characters in the PDF, and it will be full contained, and every PDF compliant viewer will be able to display it properly.
So if you never use the letter Z, then it won't have the letter Z in that.
Exactly. Another difficult thing in rendering text in PDF is that there is still no real natural support for Unicode. So basically, if you have text that contains Unicode characters, and you have what happens in PDF is that you build a character mapping between a set of up to 256 characters, so that every character is represented just by 1 byte, and the Unicode. But if you in your text use more than 256 or maybe slightly less characters, then depending on which part of text you are rendering, you have to switch between those mappings. So this is another thing that made the custom functions difficult, because I wanted to make this right. I wanted to make support, because I'm from Czech Republic, where we use diacritics in our language. So I wanted to make sure that I support Unicode characters as well. So I had to build this functionality into the custom functions, and it was another, not nightmare, but challenge.
That Sean had a question about FileMaker 19.3.
Okay, what was the question?
Does it work any better with PDFs on Windows with Edge instead of IE?
Oh, yes, in the interactive containers and web viewers, it's better. What is not so well known and not so much marketed is that 19.3 replaced the Internet Explorer engine with Edge, not only for web viewer but also for the interactive containers. So yes, it works better. It should be, with 19.3, it should be less reliant on whether you have Adobe Acrobat installed or not, and Adobe Internet plugin installed. While until 19.2, there were cases where not having the Internet plugin installed or having it disabled caused PDFs to be not working on FileMaker. One thing is still not resolved or not properly resolved. If you can recall that I think it was FileMaker 12 actually, which brought PDF streaming to FileMaker. So if you have interactive container, you have a 100-page PDF which is optimized for web, and that 100-page PDF is, let's say, 100 megabytes large. In FileMaker 12, what they added was that you could, if you enabled interactive contents, and if you had the HTTP ports open to the server, which is 443 and 80, it would stream the PDF page by page. So just to display the PDF, you would not have to download the whole 100 megabytes file, because it would stream you only the page that you are needing to view it. But since FileMaker 14 or 15, they started having issues with this. I think it was because of the introduction of SSL, and every new version of FileMaker was increasing the security requirements. There were very often cases when customers didn't see PDF working in containers on Windows, and sometimes on Mac as well, because for some reason, even though the connection between FileMaker Pro as a client and the FileMaker server was secured with the proper SSL certificate, the PDF plugin that was responsible for rendering the PDF in the container, for some reason decided that it doesn't like the SSL certificate of the FileMaker server. So instead of showing the PDF, you were getting errors. And the way Claris resolved it in 19.3.2, because in 19.3.1 it was actually even more broken than in previous versions. So the way they, or maybe 19.3.0, but the way they fixed it for now is that in 19.3.2 it will download the whole PDF to the client. So the streaming is disabled intentionally. It resolves the issues of PDF not working, but if you have a large PDF that you want to view, you will have to wait for it to download from the server before it can show up.
I think there's some browsers that do that too now, right?
Yeah, so actually I have a client who was dealing with this issue, and the way they resolved it is instead of using the interactive containers, they actually used web viewer to view the PDF, and they are streaming the PDF in the web viewer through the normal standard web server. And that in the web viewer, the streaming works properly if you provide the right URL and the connection between the client and the server is properly secured. So yeah, so for large PDFs, it's better to use for now. It's better to use web viewer than interactive containers.
Oh, really? I used to like those containers. The PDF text links, those are purely rectangles then on the page, and they're not tied to the text we're creating the link for?
Yes, and that's how it is designed in the PDF, and that has always been so.
So then you always have to predict where the text is going to appear on the page. Is that correct?
Exactly. And when you use a library that actually finds the text on the page and turns it to a link, the way the library internally works is that it basically does an OCR of the page, finds the text there, finds the coordinates, and then creates that rectangular area for the link. So the final results is still a rectangular area on the page which works as a link.
What library does that?
Every library that provides that feature. So if you find any library that lets you turn text to a link, this is the way that it will work.
But the sample file you have doesn't really do that, right?
No.
No. And let's see. Questions down here. I think that's all my questions. Dinah. Some other ones in here. I'm surprised nobody else is speaking up. Let's see. We got somebody said Dinah. Was it Robert? Says Dinah PDF question mark. What are you referring to?
It was just when Vince was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the question I had, and Robert mentioned the library.
And Sylvain says you mentioned that using a variable in the while function slows down execution. Why? What is the solution to that?
Oh well, I may have expressed myself not quite accurately. Basically, what I meant is that every construction that you use in FileMaker calculation has its overhead, and you have to be aware of it and consider it when trying to make your functions work faster. So there is always the difficult balance between making the calculation readable and making it fast. So, for instance, if you create a calculation with an intermediate result, if that intermediate result helps you to avoid calculating the same thing multiple times, then it's a good reason to have it. But if it doesn't, if it's there only for readability, then if it's something that's calculated many times in a loop, it's something to lose in favor of performance. So what I like to say typically is try to measure the overhead of some key things which you use often, like how much overhead does a script step, any script step, add to your execution time? How much overhead does every custom function add? You can build an empty custom function that returns number 1. And with our plugin Toolbox, which measures timestamps in with microseconds, you can measure how long it takes to evaluate that custom function that does nothing. And it's good to be aware of those overheads, because if you call something once, it doesn't matter. But if you call something in a loop, and specifically with those read Solomon codes, those loops are quite lengthy. I can show you in the barcode example what I had to use as a parameter for for the set recursion. So basically, if for instance I take the Aztec code as an example, which was one of the most complex ones in terms of processing. So Aztec, here it is. So I start with set recursion here, and I had to set the set recursion to 5 million. So if you calculate something 5 million times, then you do care about every millisecond.
So if you have, well, like for instance, like if you have, you try to make it more readable, so you break down your variable, so you set one variable and then you base your next variable, based on the previous variable and so on. Mm-hmm. Be more efficient just to cram that all those calculations into a single variable assignment.
Yeah, definitely. But again, it depends on how important it is for you. If you have a calculation that's calculated once per hour, keep it readable, because you will save more time by understanding the calculation. But if you end up having something that's calculated a million times in a loop, then it's worth. You may want to keep the readable version of the calculation somewhere as a backup for editing, but for production it's good to optimize it to minimize the use of unnecessary variables, because even creating a variable adds extra overhead. And it's not only overhead in time of processing time, it also adds overhead in memory, because every variable needs to have memory allocated for itself. And if you work with strings, if you have like string of 100 characters or kilobyte, creating another copy of that string in the memory is significant.
I hope that answers Sylvain's question. Darren Southern. He's asking any workaround for containers or web viewers on portals. I don't know. Maybe that was already answered. I don't know.
Oh, web viewers on portals. No. Don't use portal. You can now use cart window to replace a portal, and in that cart window you can use a list view. That's one way to do it. The other way, which is often used, is single web viewer and rendering it in HTML.
Well, we got a lot of comments too. This is excellent. This has been amazing, because you never thought anybody would expose and hand all this information over in one on one website and in one meetup like this.
It takes some amount of craziness to create this.
Yeah. So you must have long winters or something over there.
Yeah. It was actually a summer vacation. Actually, to be honest, it was COVID that helped me with this, because instead of going out of country for the vacation, I spend the time sitting in the in-laws' house with the computer on my knees. So.
Well, make sure you stand up every once in a while.
HOnza, thank you again for doing this presentation at this ungodly hour. So,
and you did great for this time.
Well, Vince, it helped me a lot to know that you are in Germany and actually supporting me in the same mood.
Didn't feel all alone. Yeah, so this is your last chance for some questions because HOnza's got all the answers, I think.
And thank you for
I don't know about anything yet.
And thank you also for being so generous with the example files and everything. I haven't downloaded it, but I'm looking forward to downloading it and trying it and exploring it, but not to the level of detail that you did.
Yeah. Too many things I could just like download right away and just start playing with it and using it. And this one.
Yeah. Well, actually, Vince, I'm quite curious if you come up with some use for the drawing functions, because I know you're pretty good in data visualizations, so that might be a good match between your data visualization experience and the possibilities that this can give you.
Has anyone played around with like taking stuff that's in the web viewer and trying to shove it into a PDF?
Well, it would be probably better that there are already libraries or open source libraries for basically rendering HTML into PDF. So it would be probably better to do it that way. Because, creating barcodes with the Reed-Solomon codes, that's a challenge for the calculation engine. But trying to build an HTML rendering engine in FileMaker calculations, that would be insane.
That's the next project, HOnza.
Yeah, next time.
Well,
good thing we got a Delta variant out here.
after they make the calculation engine at least 1,000 times faster, then I can consider it.
Yeah, HOnza, did you say that that new demo file would be available? The one with you're doing the page parsing?
Well, the working version is available now.
Oh, so there we go. Okay, thank you.
If you use this last link, you can get it immediately.
If we just go to your website and just search for PDF, all the stuff should pop up, right?
Not the last one.
Oh.
Because that's still work in progress. So this is exclusively shared with the group here.
Nice. Yeah, thanks Sean for he copying and pasting a lot of these URLs right into the chat. Which I'm going to steal right now before we quit this session. All right, well, any other questions? Because we're going to stop recording for just a minute. Well, thank you again. That was awesome. What a finish! And like I said, there's we have a community post out there that what is it? I think I posted it in the chat already. But yeah, if you guys want to continue the conversation, post any other information or links, you could do that there, where I'm going to be posting this chat and a link to the recording when we're done, and anything else that we have. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, HOnza.
Thank you as well.